Hey guys, this is Elena from William to Share. This video is the second video of reviewing the AP English Language and Composition Glossary of Literary and Rhetorical Devices. And so make sure to watch the first if you didn't. And now let's start right on by this word, didactic. So didactic is a term used to describe fiction, nonfiction, or poetry that teaches a specific lesson or moral or provides a model of correct behavior or thinking. So the key over here is that it teaches something. It teaches like a specific lesson or provides like the right model of something. So, and there's lots of types of didactic. So first of all, it will be adage. Adage is like a folk saying with a lesson. A folk saying with a lesson. So it will be, for example, a rolling stone gathers no moss. And that's like just a folk saying that carries a certain kind of a lesson, right? So you can understand that as an adage. And the allegory is like a story, fictional or non-fictional, in which characters, things, and events represent qualities or concepts. And the interaction of these characters, things, and events is meant to reveal an abstraction or truth. So it's basically like a story, and then it reveals an abstraction or truth. So, for example, The Animal Farm by George Orwell is an allegory, or like arguably the most famous and compelling story or a compelling allegory in philosophy would be Plato's allegory of the cave. Okay, so that kind of things will be allegory. And aphorisms is a terse statement which expresses a general truth or moral principle. Okay, a terse statement. Aphorism is a terse statement that expresses a general truth or moral principle. An aphorism can be a memorable summation of the author's points. So Ben Franklin wrote many of these impervious elements, such as God helps them that help themselves, and a watch pot never boils. One of the most well-known aphorisms are those La Rhetorical, and his aphorisms were really prominent for delivering his punchline in like 3 seconds, and then like accusing or talking about humans' pitiful nature. Just keep that in mind. And next is ellipsis, which is the deliberate omission of a word or phrase, prose done for effect by the author. So it's like a deliberate omission of a word, okay? So ellipsis is the omission of a word. And for example, it will be the whole day rain, torrents of rain. So the term ellipsis is related to ellipse, which is the 3 periods using the should omitted text in a quotation. And for me, it was really hard to memorize or match these two. So I just remembered that a girl named Ellie tried to say like I'm gonna omit this word quietly. So a girl named Ellie said, I'm gonna omit this word carefully. So this is why. So you can memorize like me if you want. A girl named Ellie said to her next friend to tell her that she's gonna omit certain kind of word deliberately. And the next here, we're gonna look at euphemism, which is a more agreeable or less offensive substitute for generally unpleasant words or concepts. There's like a less offensive substitute for generally unpleasant words or concepts. So sometimes they're used for political correctness. So for example, physically challenged in place of crippled. And sometimes the euphemism is used to exaggerate correctness to add humor. So you're gonna say vertically challenged in place of short. Next, we're gonna look at figurative language, which is the opposite of literal language. So in literal language is writing that makes complete sense when you take it at face value. So that is something that you can understand by its word itself, by literally interpreting what that means. However, figurative language is the opposite. So writing that is not meant to be taken literally. So you need to look inside, like and think carefully think what the author really means by using this word or writing like this. And types of figurative language goes like this. So first is analogy. An analogy is a comparison of one pair of variables to a parallel set of variables. So when a writer uses analogy, he or she argues that the relationship between the first pair of variables is the same as the relationship between the second pair of variables. So analogy is everything about relationship. So for example, it will be that America is to the world as hippo is to the jungle. And similes and metaphors are sometimes also analogies. So like America to the world is same as the hippo to the jungle. And what this means is that America is basically is like a part of the world. It's like a country, right? And similar to that, hippo is like a component of the jungle. Hippo is like animal that lives in the jungle. So that's why the relationship between America and the world is similar to the relationship between hippo and jungle. And next, we're going to look at hyperbole, which is basically exaggeration. So that means, for example, my mother will kill me if I'm late. If you interpret this like literally, like in the literal sense, your mother is really going to kill you, but that's not going to happen. That doesn't make sense in the literal meaning. But instead, if you think what this is means that your mother will scold you and be mad at you as if she will kill you if I'm late, right? So that's why hyperbole is like an exaggeration that is a kind of a figurative language that is not meant to be taken literally. The third is idiom, which is a common, often used expression that doesn't make any sense if you take it literally. Again, this is something that doesn't make sense if you take it literally, but it's something that is very common and often used expression. So for example, it would say, I got chewed out by my coach. Over here, the expression I got chewed out means, like, does not mean that your coach is like chewing you or like chewing you out. But it's like a more common and often used expression that means that you got like scolded by your coach, right? So you can remember the idiom is also something that doesn't make sense if you take it literally, but you understand what it means because you use them commonly, oftenly in daily conversations with your friends and your families. And next, it will be a metaphor. Metaphor is like making an implied comparison, not using like, as, or other such words. So it's like a comparison, but it does not use like or as. And if you use like or as, it will be a simile, okay? Simile would be using words such as like or as to make like a direct comparison. So let's see this first, okay, simile. For example, it would be, my feet are so cold that they feel like popsicles. So you're basically saying that, oh, my feet are really, really cold, so they feel like popsicles, okay? So you're making a direct comparison by using the word like or as. However, the metaphor is like kind of more indirect or like an implied comparison. So you're not going to use the word like or as like a simile. Over here, you're going to say that my feet are popsicles. Okay, so you're basically saying that your feet are popsicles, and you're implying that they are similar because a popsicle is cold and my feet is also cold. So that is why it's like an implied comparison, but you're not using the word like or as to directly compare these two, like the simile. And an extended metaphor is when the metaphor is continued later in the written work. And basically this is easy to understand because it's like an extended metaphor. So when the metaphor is continued also so long until the later in the written work. And if I continue to call my feet my popsicles in later paragraphs, that would be an extended metaphor, okay? So also a particularly elaborate extended metaphor is called conceit. And next is metonymy, which is replacing an actual word or idea with a related word or concept. So you're going to say that relations between London and Washington have been strained. Okay, and that this does not literally mean that the relations between the two cities are strained, but the relationship between the two leaders of the United States and England have been strained, right? So it's basically replacing an actual word with a related word or concept. And metonymy is often used with body parts. So it would say that I could not understand his tongue, which means that, which does not literally mean that I do not understand his tongue as in the real body parts, but basically the tongue implies his language or his speech, right? So these kind of replacing ideas, actual ideas or concepts by a related word is what we call metonymy. And this is very frequently come out. And also, a kind of metonymy you're going to see, a synecdoche, which is a kind of metonymy when the whole is represented by naming of its parts or vice versa. And the whole is represented by naming one of its parts or like the components. So you could say that the cattle rancher owned 500 head. Okay, if you say that it owned 500 head, a head would be a part of the cattle that the cattle rancher owns, right? So a head was used to represent the cattle that the cattle rancher had, and the head is like the component, like the part of a cattle. And if we say that also, check out my new wheels, this doesn't mean that like I have a new wheel, but instead it could be something like a car, right? So I had bought a new car, and then a part or a component of this car is its wheels. So that is why I'm using the word wheel to imply the whole of a car, and my car is basically represented by naming its particles or part, which is wheels. Okay, and this would be the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.